I accidentally entered a vampire wedding and became bound to an alien vampire woman. It was supposed to be just another day, a normal trip to an unfamiliar city for a bit of adventure. Alex, an ordinary guy, had been traveling alone for the past few weeks, wanting to explore places he'd only heard about in books. He was far from the usual tourist spots, tucked in the remote corners of the world, trying to find something new. The day had started like any other, a quiet stroll through the streets, taking pictures of buildings and trying the local food. But he hadn't expected to end up crashing a wedding, especially not one so strange. As Alex wandered through the narrow, cobbled streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The city was almost too quiet. People walked briskly, their eyes lowered, avoiding eye contact. He shrugged it off, thinking it was just the locals being private. But then he noticed something that caught his attention, a mansion at the end of the street. It was large and imposing, with towering spires and windows that seemed to gleam in the afternoon sun. It looked like something straight out of a fantasy movie. Curiosity got the better of him, and he approached the gates. There was a soft hum of music coming from inside, and Alex, not knowing why, felt an undeniable urge to go in. It was as if the mansion was calling him. The gates were slightly open, and without much thought he slipped inside. The music was louder now, filling the air with an elegant, haunting melody. It sounded like a live orchestra, but there was a strange quality to it, something almost otherworldly. As he walked through the grand entrance, the door creaked softly behind him, and Alex found himself in a large, dimly lit hallway. The floor was made of dark marble, and the walls were adorned with rich velvet tapestries. There were chandeliers above, casting eerie shadows on the floor, but it wasn't the decor that made Alex stop in his tracks. It was the people. The guests were gathered in the massive hall, all dressed in the most elegant gowns and suits Alex had ever seen. They were talking in hushed tones, but their voices carried a strange echo, like they were speaking from far away. And then Alex saw her. At the end of the room, near a grand staircase, stood a woman dressed in a flowing, blood-red gown. Her skin was pale, almost glowing in the dim light. Her long, black hair cascaded down her back, and her eyes, those eyes, were an unnatural shade of red. Alex felt an electric shock run through him as their eyes locked, as though she could see straight through him. It was then that he realized this wasn't a regular wedding. This was something different. Before Alex could turn around and slip out the way he came, the crowd went silent, and a man in a dark tuxedo approached him. He had a smooth, cold voice that sent a chill down Alex's spine. "You're not supposed to be here, are you?" the man asked with a knowing smile. Alex stammered, trying to explain himself, but the man cut him off. "You're already here, and I'm afraid you'll be staying for a while." Alex felt a strange, tugging sensation in his chest. Something about the situation felt wrong, but he didn't know how to get out of it. The woman in red was still watching him, her gaze unblinking. A strange sense of inevitability washed over him, as if he was stuck in a moment he couldn't escape from. The ceremony began, and the woman in red, who he now realized was the bride, started to walk down the aisle. Her movements were graceful, ethereal, almost as if she was floating above the ground. As she passed by Alex, he couldn't help but feel drawn to her, like an invisible force was pulling him closer. He wasn't sure why, but he couldn't look away. Suddenly, the air shifted. The temperature dropped, and the once calm atmosphere became tense. A dark cloud seemed to descend over the room. The bride stopped in front of the altar, her gaze never leaving Alex's. The air hummed with energy, like the very fabric of reality was bending around them. The ceremony had taken a turn, and Alex felt the strange, unexplainable pull of the woman's presence deep within him. The man in the tuxedo, still standing beside him, placed a cold hand on his shoulder. "You're about to become part of something greater," he whispered. "You don't have a choice." Before Alex could react, the bride raised her hand, and a sharp, piercing pain shot through his chest. It felt as though every muscle in his body had seized, his heart pounding in his ears. He gasped for breath, but it was like the air itself had turned thick and suffocating. The bride's voice, calm and melodic, filled the room. "The blood bond is sealed." Alex's vision blurred, and he collapsed to his knees, struggling to remain conscious. The room around him seemed to spin as the pain intensified, like something deep within him was being torn apart and reassembled. His head swam with dizzying sensations, flashes of unfamiliar places, faces, and memories he couldn't understand. When the world finally stopped spinning, Alex opened his eyes to find himself standing once again, though his body felt heavier than ever before. The bride was standing in front of him, her hand still extended in the air. The air was thick with magic, ancient, powerful, and unlike anything Alex had ever felt. "You," she said softly, "are now bound to me." Alex tried to speak to ask what was happening, but his throat was dry and his voice felt foreign. He couldn't understand why he felt so connected to this woman, this alien, powerful being, but he couldn't deny the overwhelming bond between them. "I am Lyra," she said, her voice soothing despite the coldness in her eyes. "You are mine now. Your fate is sealed, and you will stay by my side for the rest of your days." The words didn't make sense, but the bond was clear. He felt her presence in his mind like an unshakable weight pressing against his thoughts. He couldn't break free. It was as if the very essence of his being had been entwined with hers. The world outside of this moment didn't matter anymore. It was just him and her, bound together by a force he didn't understand, yet couldn't escape. Lyra smiled, though it wasn't a smile that conveyed warmth. It was a smile of power, of control. "You're mine now," she repeated, her voice almost a whisper, "and you will serve me, whether you like it or not." Alex stood there, feeling trapped in an alien world. The wedding, the strange guests, and the eerie mansion, all of it had led to this moment. He had entered something far beyond his understanding, and now there was no turning back. The wedding was over, but for Alex, his true journey had only just begun. Alex could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. "You're mine now." Her voice echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of the bond that now linked them. He wanted to scream, to push her away, but the sensation of her presence was everywhere. It wasn't just in the room, it was in his thoughts, in his chest, in his very blood. He was tied to her, whether he liked it or not. The room, once filled with the laughter and music of the wedding, was now silent. The guests had returned to their hushed conversations, but Alex felt like an outsider in a world that no longer made sense. He was still standing, though he felt as if his legs might give way at any moment. The pain in his chest had faded to a dull throb, but the sense of loss, the feeling that something had been taken from him, was still there. Lyra watched him carefully, her piercing red eyes studying him as if he were some sort of puzzle she was trying to solve. Her beauty was otherworldly, yes, but there was something more, a power that seemed to radiate from her very being. Alex could feel it, too. It was like a force that pulled him closer, even though every instinct in his body screamed for him to run. "You don't understand yet," she said softly, almost as if she were speaking to herself. "But you will." Alex opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He tried again, this time with more force, but his throat was dry, and his voice was little more than a rasp. "I don't want this," he managed to say. His voice felt foreign to him, like he wasn't in control of it. Lyra's lips curved into a small smile, a smile that was both understanding and cold. "You have no choice. The bond is ancient. It cannot be undone. We are linked, and you are now a part of my world." Her words sent a chill down Alex's spine. The world she spoke of was a place he didn't understand. He had stumbled into a vampire wedding, but this was no ordinary wedding. This was something darker, something older. Alex glanced around the room, looking for any sign of escape. The mansion's grand hall was filled with people, guests, all dressed in elegant attire, but there was an unnatural stillness to them. They weren't talking like normal people. They were watching him, watching with eyes that seemed too knowing, too calculating. They weren't human. He felt a jolt in his chest, and for a moment he thought he might pass out. The connection to Lyra was stronger now, like a tether that stretched across the distance between them. He could feel her every thought, every shift in her mood. It was overwhelming, and it left him reeling. Lyra's voice broke through his confusion. "The bond means more than you realize, Alex. It's not just about being bound to me physically. It's about being bound to my world, my people. You're not just a guest anymore. You're part of this." "What do you mean, your people?" Alex asked, still struggling to make sense of it all. He wasn't sure what she meant, but the more he heard, the more the pieces seemed to fit together in a way he didn't want them to. "You're in the world of the vampires," Lyra replied simply. "An ancient world hidden from most of humanity, but now you are part of it. You're no longer just a human. You are bound to me, to my family. And that means you're part of the power struggle that controls everything." Alex could feel his head spinning. Vampires, hidden worlds, power struggles. He had no idea what he had stumbled into, but he was in too deep now to just walk away. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice trembling. He had to know. He had to understand why this was happening to him. Lyra looked at him with a mixture of amusement and something darker, something more dangerous. "I want nothing from you, Alex, at least not yet. The bond has already been sealed. It's not about what I want. It's about what you must do now." Alex opened his mouth to protest, but she held up a hand, silencing him. "The world you knew is no longer yours. You are now bound to the vampire courts. And there are things you can't even imagine, that will come for you because of this bond." Her words sent a chill through his bones. He had known something was wrong, but hearing her speak so matter-of-factly about the vampire world only made him more afraid. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into, but he knew one thing. It wasn't something he could just walk away from. Alex glanced around the room again, but the guests were now moving toward the exit, as if they were leaving for an after-party or a private celebration. They didn't seem worried, nor did they look at him with pity. No one seemed to care about the human who had been dragged into their world. "You're not just some accident," Lyra said, stepping closer to him, her presence looming over him like a shadow. "You are a part of my story now, and your story, Alex, is just beginning." She reached out and placed a hand on his chest, the warmth of her touch burning through his shirt. It wasn't painful, but it was enough to make him flinch. There was power there, something dark and consuming. The bond is not just a connection of blood, it's a connection of destiny. You're now part of my family, whether you like it or not. And that means you must follow the rules of my world. Alex tried to step back, but his legs felt unsteady. It was as if he was being drawn into her gravitational pull. He could feel his pulse quickening, his breath shallow. Something was happening to him, something he couldn't control. Lyra tilted her head, sensing his panic. "You'll adapt. The change will come slowly, but it will come. You'll learn to embrace this new life. And when you do, you'll understand why the bond is necessary." He could feel the heat of her eyes on him as she stepped closer. He was trapped. The bond between them was like a leash, pulling him closer to her, and there was nothing he could do to break free. The world he had known, his ordinary, simple life, was gone. He was now a part of something far bigger, something that had existed long before he even knew it. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice soft, yet carrying an underlying sense of authority. "To accept your place in this world, to live with the vampires and all the power that comes with it." Alex wanted to scream. He didn't want this. He didn't want to be a part of this dark, twisted world, but the truth was undeniable. He was already bound to it. There was no going back. The room seemed to close in on him, and for a moment he could barely breathe. The connection between him and Lyra was growing stronger, deeper. He could feel it in his very bones. He had no choice. He had to face whatever was coming. The days following the blood bond were a blur for Alex. He woke up in the mansion every morning, unable to leave, unable to escape. It was as if the world had shifted around him, trapping him in a strange, new reality that he didn't understand. He had been pulled into a world of ancient power and dark secrets, and no matter how much he wished to break free, the bond with Lyra kept him tethered. Every moment felt like a battle inside his own mind. Lyra's presence was constantly with him, whether she was near or far. He could feel her thoughts brushing against his, hear her distant whispers echoing in his head. It was as if she were a part of him, and that made him feel both connected and trapped at the same time. Lyra didn't make things any easier. She treated him with a cold formality, as though they were merely partners in an ancient game. She didn't speak to him with affection or warmth, but with a sense of duty, as though she were performing a task rather than interacting with another person. Alex hated the way it made him feel, small and insignificant. He was nothing more than a pawn in her world, and she didn't care for him in any way other than as an extension of her power. It wasn't just Lyra who seemed to view him with detachment. The other vampires in the mansion were equally indifferent to his presence. They would glance at him from time to time, their eyes filled with curiosity or disdain, but no one spoke to him unless they had to. He was an outsider, a human who didn't belong. The mansion itself was as cold and lifeless as its inhabitants, filled with towering stone walls and endless corridors that stretched out into darkness. It felt like a prison, but with no visible bars. One evening, as Alex wandered through the halls, trying to clear his mind, he came across a large library. It was a quiet, imposing room filled with ancient books and scrolls. The air smelled of dust and leather, and the low light of a single candle flickered from the corner. Alex had never seen so many books in one place, and something about the room pulled him in. He moved toward a shelf and began to scan the spines, hoping to find something that might explain more about this world he had been forced into. As his fingers brushed over the books, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "You're looking for answers, aren't you?" Startled, Alex turned to find a tall man standing behind him. He was dressed in black, his hair neatly combed and his eyes sharp and intelligent. There was something ancient about him, something that made Alex instinctively take a step back. "Who are you?" Alex asked, his voice cautious. The man smiled, though it wasn't a smile of kindness. It was a smile that spoke of power and experience. "I am Alaric, a friend of Lyra's. I've been here longer than you can imagine." Alex frowned, his curiosity piqued despite himself. "How long have you been here?" Alaric's smile widened, but it was filled with a certain darkness. "Long enough to know that nothing here is as it seems. And long enough to understand what the bond means. You may be trapped, but you're not powerless." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Alaric stepped closer, his eyes studying Alex carefully. "Lyra doesn't care about you. She sees you as a tool, something to use, something to control. But you don't have to stay a pawn in her game. You have more power than you think. The bond doesn't just link you to her. It links you to everything she is, everything she represents. You have the power to break free." Alex's mind raced. "Break free?" he repeated. "How?" Alaric leaned in, his voice dropping to a low whisper. "You need to understand the nature of the vampire's power. We are not just immortal creatures. We are part of a larger force, a force that governs the very fabric of this world. Lyra's family controls this power, but it's not hers alone. It belongs to all of us, and if you want to escape, you need to learn how to control it." Alex was stunned. "But I'm human. I don't have their power." Alaric gave a dry chuckle. "You may be human, but the bond changes you. It connects you to Lyra's power, whether you like it or not. You've already felt it, haven't you? The way you can sense her emotions, the way she can influence your thoughts. It's a small taste of what you could control if you choose to embrace it." "But why are you telling me this?" Alex asked, his mind racing with possibilities. He didn't trust Alaric, he didn't trust anyone in this world. But the idea of breaking free from Lyra's control was too tempting to ignore. Alaric's eyes flickered with something unreadable. "Because I know what it's like to be trapped, and I know what it's like to want to be free. Lyra is dangerous. She thinks she's invincible, but no one is, not even her." Alex took a deep breath. He had been so focused on the bond, on the way it tied him to Lyra, that he hadn't stopped to think about what it actually meant. Alaric's words echoed in his mind, and for the first time, Alex allowed himself to consider the possibility that he wasn't entirely powerless. "What do I need to do?" Alex asked, his voice steady. Alaric's gaze softened just for a moment. "You need to learn. You need to embrace the power that's now a part of you. There's a place, hidden deep within the mansion, where the ancient texts are kept. The knowledge you need is there, but you'll have to decide if you're willing to face the truth of who you've become." The idea of learning more, of gaining control over the power that had been thrust upon him, was tempting. But Alex knew it wouldn't be easy. There was no telling what would happen once he started digging deeper into the vampire world, and there was no guarantee he would be able to get out unscathed. Still, something in him stirred, something that wanted to fight back. He wasn't ready to accept that he had no control over his life, not yet. "Where is it?" Alex asked, determination growing in his chest. Alaric's smile returned, this time more genuine. "I'll show you, but be careful. Knowledge is power, but it can also be dangerous." With that, Alaric turned and walked toward a door hidden behind a tapestry. Alex hesitated for a moment, but then followed, feeling the weight of the decision settle on his shoulders. There was no going back. If he wanted to escape, if he wanted to break free from Lyra's control, he would have to learn the truth. And the truth, as Alaric had said, might change everything. The door opened into a hidden corridor, lined with ancient bookshelves filled with dusty tomes and scrolls. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and ink, and Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as he stepped inside. The books here weren't like the ones in the library outside. They were older, their covers worn and fragile. Alaric led him deeper into the room, stopping in front of a large stone chest. With a simple gesture, the chest creaked open, revealing a collection of ancient scrolls and books that glowed faintly in the dim light. "This is where the knowledge of our kind is kept," Alaric said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Take what you need, but be careful. Not all knowledge is meant for everyone." Alex's heart raced as he stepped forward, reaching for the nearest book. The power he felt coursing through his veins was growing stronger with every passing second. It was as if the very walls of the mansion were alive with it. This was it. The first step toward freedom. Alex stood in the hidden room, surrounded by the ancient books and scrolls that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. His fingers brushed over the delicate pages, feeling the weight of the knowledge they held. Every book, every scroll was a window into a world he didn't understand, but it was also his only chance to break free from the bond with Lyra. Alaric watched him from the doorway, his eyes calm but knowing. "Take your time, Alex," he said quietly. "The knowledge you seek is here, but be careful. The truth is not always easy to bear." Alex nodded but didn't look up. His focus was entirely on the books before him. He knew that this was his chance. If he could understand the magic that bound him to Lyra, maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to escape. The idea of living forever bound to her, a part of her world, made his stomach turn. But it wasn't just about escaping anymore. He needed to understand what kind of power he was dealing with. He pulled a heavy book from the shelf, its cover embossed with strange symbols he didn't recognize. The book felt cold in his hands, and as he opened it, the pages seemed to almost shimmer as if alive. The language was ancient, almost indecipherable, but there were diagrams and symbols that seemed to call out to him. As his eyes scanned the pages, he could feel a tugging sensation in his mind. It was as if the book was trying to communicate with him, showing him the way to unlock the secrets of the vampire's power. Alaric stepped closer, his footsteps light but deliberate. "You'll need help translating that," he said, his voice carrying a tone of knowing. "Not every human can read the language of the ancients." Alex closed the book and turned to face him. "Then teach me," he said, his voice firm. "I want to understand. I have to." Alaric raised an eyebrow but didn't seem surprised. "Very well. But know this, knowledge comes with consequences. It's not just the power of the vampires you'll be dealing with. It's the consequences of uncovering secrets that have been buried for centuries." Alex didn't care. He was already in too deep, bound to Lyra, trapped in this world. What did he have to lose by learning the truth? If anything, it was his only way out. Alaric walked over to a different shelf and pulled down another book, this one thinner but more ornate. He handed it to Alex. "This one is different. It's a guide to understanding the connection between a human and a vampire, particularly in cases like yours. It will explain how the bond works, why it exists, and how to manipulate it." Alex took the book, his hands shaking slightly. He wasn't sure if it was from fear or anticipation, but the need to know overwhelmed him. He opened it, scanning the first page. The language was difficult but not impossible. The more he read, the more he began to understand. The bond between a vampire and a human wasn't just about blood. It was about power, control, and something much deeper. As he read, a cold realization settled over him. This bond wasn't something that could be easily broken. It was woven into the very fabric of his being. And as much as he hated it, the connection between him and Lyra was growing stronger every day. But there was hope. The book described rituals, spells, and techniques that could help him learn to control the bond, not just endure it. If he could master these, maybe he could turn the tables. Maybe he could control the bond instead of being a slave to it. For the first time since the wedding, Alex felt a flicker of hope. The thought of breaking free, of escaping Lyra's grasp, seemed within reach. But the more he read, the more he realized that breaking the bond wasn't as simple as he thought. There were layers to the magic, layers that went beyond just him and Lyra. The vampires had built their power on these bonds, on manipulating humans, controlling them, using them as pawns in a much larger game. And Alex had been caught right in the middle of it. He felt a presence before he even saw her. "Alex," Lyra's voice echoed from the doorway, cool and commanding. She stood there, framed by the dim light, her red eyes glowing faintly. She was beautiful, but there was something predatory about her that sent a shiver down his spine. He quickly closed the book, but Lyra was already moving toward him, her footsteps silent on the stone floor. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. "You think you can escape? You think you can control what's already been decided?" Alex didn't back down. "I'm not trying to escape," he said, his voice steady. "I'm trying to understand." Lyra's eyes narrowed as she stepped closer. "Understand what exactly? You've already been given the gift of immortality. You've already been bound to me. What more do you need to know?" Alex's heart raced, but he stood his ground. "I need to know why. I need to understand why I'm here, why I'm tied to you, and what you really want from me." Lyra smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. You're bound to me, Alex, not just by blood, but by destiny. You're part of something much bigger than you realize. The bond is not just about me and you, it's about power, power that you will help me control. Alex's pulse quickened. Power, what do you mean? Lyra's smile widened, her red eyes glowing brighter. Vampires like me, we don't just survive, we dominate, we shape the world around us. The bond between us is just the beginning. You are now a part of that power, whether you like it or not. Alex took a step back, his mind racing. He had always known there was something off about this world, but hearing it from Lyra's lips made it all too real. The bond wasn't just a curse. It was a tool, a weapon, a way to control him. And the more he resisted, the more he realized that Lyra wasn't going to let him go. She wanted him not just as an ally, but as a pawn in her game. You'll learn to accept it, Lyra continued, her voice soft but firm. You'll learn to serve me just as you were always meant to. Alex's stomach churned. He wasn't sure if it was fear or anger, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had been walking into a trap from the very beginning. The bond, the power, the connection, it was all part of a larger plan, and he was just a small piece in it. I'm not your servant, Alex said, his voice low but defiant. Lyra's gaze turned cold and she stepped closer to him. You will be, Alex, there's no running from this. You've already given yourself to me. Now all you can do is accept it and learn to control it. Alex could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him, but he wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. He had come this far and he wasn't about to let her win. He would learn everything he could from the books, from Alaric. He would understand the bond and then, maybe, he would be able to turn it to his advantage. As Lyra turned to leave, she glanced over her shoulder, her eyes filled with warning. Don't forget, Alex, you belong to me, and one way or another you will learn to serve me. The door clicked shut behind her, and Alex was left standing alone in the library. His heart was pounding in his chest, and the weight of the situation threatened to crush him, but he wasn't ready to give in. He had one goal now, to understand the power that bound him to Lyra and to find a way to break free. The days blurred together for Alex as he immersed himself in the ancient texts, trying to understand the power that bound him to Lyra. Each book he read, each scroll he studied, only deepened his understanding of the vampire world. But with that knowledge came an overwhelming sense of helplessness. The more he learned, the more he realized how far out of his depth he truly was. Alaric had been his guide, but even he had warned Alex about the dangers of the knowledge he was seeking. The ancient rituals, the bonds, the manipulations, they were all part of a much bigger picture, one that Alex had never asked to be a part of. Despite the weight of it all, a small part of him began to feel something else, something more powerful than fear or confusion. It was determination. He couldn't just accept being a pawn in Lyra's world. He couldn't just give in to the power she wielded over him. He would find a way to break the bond, to regain control of his life. But as the days passed, Alex began to feel the pull of the bond more strongly. He could sense Lyra's presence even when she wasn't near him. The bond between them had become something more than just a connection. It was a constant, nagging force that influenced his thoughts, his feelings, his very actions. He wasn't sure how much longer he could resist. Every time he tried to focus on breaking the bond, his thoughts would be clouded by her. Her voice, her power, her presence, it was always there. It wasn't just a curse. It was a force that controlled him, that shaped his world. One evening, as Alex sat in the library, reading one of the texts that detailed the rituals that could strengthen the bond, he heard a soft knock at the door. His heart skipped a beat. He knew who it was before she even entered. Lyra stood in the doorway, her red eyes glowing in the dim light of the room. She looked at him with that same detached, almost clinical expression, as though she were studying him rather than seeing him as a person. Are you still trying to resist? She asked, her voice smooth, almost mocking. It's a wasted effort, Alex. You belong to me. The bond is unbreakable. Alex didn't respond right away. He couldn't. Every time he opened his mouth, the words seemed to get caught in his throat. It was like his mind was at war with itself. Part of him wanted to argue, to fight, but another part of him, one he hated, felt a strange pull toward her, a desire to submit to the connection between them. I'm not your servant, Alex said finally, his voice low but firm. I'm not just some tool you can use. Lyra stepped into the room, her movements slow and deliberate. She didn't seem angry, but her presence alone was enough to make Alex's heart race. You're not just a tool, Alex, she said, her voice almost softer now. You're more than that. You're a part of me, and no matter how much you resist, you will always be a part of me. Alex stood up abruptly, the chair scraping across the floor. No, I won't be your puppet. I won't live my life controlled by this bond. Lyra's gaze softened, but only slightly. You misunderstand. The bond isn't just about control. It's about power, true power. You have the strength to change the world, Alex. If you learn to embrace it, we could rule together. We could reshape everything. The words hung in the air like a promise, like a dream too tempting to ignore. Alex felt the pull, the lure of her words. Part of him wanted to believe her, to take her hand and accept the power she was offering. But another part of him, his human side, the part that wanted freedom, fought against it. I don't want to rule, Alex said, his voice filled with conviction. I just want to be free. Lyra's expression darkened slightly, her eyes flashing with something dangerous. Freedom, Alex, is an illusion. No one is ever truly free. We all serve something, whether we admit it or not. The bond between us is your destiny. You can fight it all you want, but in the end, you'll come to accept it. Alex took a step back, his mind racing. She was right about one thing. He couldn't deny that the bond had already changed him. He could feel the pull of it in every part of his being. But it wasn't just her power he was fighting. It was his own will, his own choice. I won't give in, Alex said, more to himself than to Lyra. I'll find a way. I'll break this. Lyra studied him for a long moment, her red eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place, curiosity, amusement, perhaps even pity. If you really believe that, Alex, you're more foolish than I thought. But, she paused, her lips curving into a small smile, I admire your spirit. It's what makes you different from the others. Before Alex could respond, she turned to leave, her black gown trailing behind her like a shadow. You'll come around, Alex. Eventually, we all do. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving Alex alone in the library once again. His heart was pounding in his chest, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and determination. He wasn't sure how much longer he could resist her. He wasn't sure how much longer he could fight the bond. But one thing was certain, he wasn't ready to give up. For the next few days, Alex focused all his energy on the books, on the rituals, on the knowledge that Alaric had given him. He didn't want to just survive in this world. He wanted to take control of it. He didn't want to be bound to Lyra forever, to be her pawn in a game he didn't understand. He had to learn to manipulate the bond, to use it to his advantage. One evening, as Alex practiced a meditation ritual from one of the books, he felt a change. It was subtle at first, like a shift in the air, but it grew stronger as the minutes passed. He felt the bond, the connection to Lyra, pulsing with energy, but this time it didn't feel like an invisible leash around his neck. It felt like a power he could control. His heart raced as he focused on the sensation, pushing against the bond, trying to break through the wall that Lyra had built around him. He could feel her, feel the link between them, but this time, instead of being overwhelmed by it, he felt a sense of calm. He could hear her thoughts, feel her emotions, but he was no longer a prisoner to them. He had done it. He had taken the first step toward freedom, but he knew this was only the beginning. There was still so much he didn't understand. He had to learn more to master the power that had been given to him, and there was only one person who could help him now, Alaric. The next morning, Alex sought him out in the mansion's corridors. He found Alaric in one of the quieter rooms, staring out a window, lost in thought. I did it, Alex said, his voice filled with determination. I felt it. The bond, it's not as strong as it was. I think I can control it now. Alaric turned to face him, a look of approval in his eyes. I knew you had it in you, Alex, but be careful. The bond may not be as strong as it was, but Lyra won't give up easily. She'll try to break you, and she'll use everything she has to do it. Alex nodded, his resolve hardening. I'm ready. And so the final battle began, not between Lyra and Alex, but between the human will and the powerful force that sought to control it. Alex knew he wasn't free yet, but for the first time since the bond had been sealed, he felt like he had a chance to escape. The road ahead would be difficult, but Alex was no longer afraid. He had the power to change his fate, and he was going to fight for it with everything he had.